Welcome to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Bio. Join me as we uncover how setbacks, challenges, and failures can become those pivotal moments that lead to purpose-driven, fulfilled lives. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing stories, insights, and tools to help you reclaim your power and show you how life's biggest challenges are happening for us, not to break us, but to redirect us toward the life we deeply desire. Whether you're here for inspiration, mindset shifts, or just to feel more aligned in your journey, you are in the right place. So whether you're catching a break, powering through, or squeezing in some me time, let's dive into the lessons hidden in life's ups and downs. We're here to embrace every unexpected twist, moving toward a life of passion, purpose, and authenticity. These stories, they are proof that you too can make those shifts happen. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie, and today I have a very special guest with me, Robin. We were actually just talking about following your heart and doing it anyways. I think because a lot of times we can have people that might not understand the following of your heart and going with the passion-filled, purposeful life. And so we're going to kind of dive into his story and what he really coaches on and lots of pivotal changes in his life. And we're going to dive into that. And so Robin, I want you to take the stage now and just basically tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and why you're so inspired to do it.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Maggie. I'm really happy to be here. So my name is Robin. I'm from Germany, and I am a courage and self-leadership coach, musician, and a yoga teacher. And I used to work in the video game industry. I was working in animation, but just realized that wasn't quite sort of the right path for me at some point, and then just make a pretty drastic shift moving towards a healing and personal development and actually like music career and stuff like that. So I've always been pretty radical about doing my own thing and following my own heart, and honestly I think it's always felt to me like I don't really have a choice. Like it's almost like I'm incapable of doing anything else. It's just like
I want you to dive into that a little bit, because I think a lot of us are probably like, wow, that that's like your path or your purpose. And some of us are going, wow, how does he know that? So when you talk like that, why do you feel that? Is there an energy about you? What is that?
It's just, I suppose I follow what just really interests me and just, but that doesn't quite do it justice. It's more like it's just a knowing somewhere inside my heart that, oh yeah, this is where I need to go. Yeah. It's like some kind of like an inner compass or something.
I love
and
that.
I think I've been pretty lucky that I've always had a very strong sense of where I want to be going. Like I have changed directions quite drastically a few times, but at least I always had a very clear sense of where I want to go and being like, okay, and this is it, and I'm going to put my all into it. And
Can I ask you too, when you say that, you said it's kind of the inner compass, the inner knowing. I think a lot of times I reference that to that alignment, that flow state, the ease. It just almost kind of just flows and goes in a natural pattern when you're on that compass that's saying, hey, Robin, maybe try this out, or hey, go this way in this direction. And so I think it sounds like you've had some pivotal moments in your life where you've decided to start your self-development, healing, that journey in the process. Where were you at that made you think, I really do kind of want to explore into this healing journey? And then now you're also mentoring and coaching other people through it.
Right. So basically, when I got out of school, I didn't really think I was good for anything, but maybe perhaps making video games. And I was also kind of passionate about that at the time. And even that at the time was a bit of an outlandish idea. I think my dad only allowed that because he thought that I would learn how to, I don't know, fix computers or something at least. So it was kind of like, okay, like, you can fail at this and then at least you can repair computers or something like that.
Yeah.
And but I did it anyway, and became a pretty good animator. So I could have had a probably could have had a pretty good career in animation. But it was actually around, I moved to Berlin. I studied game design. I did like a bachelor on animation, and around the time that I was doing that, I was just kind of realizing that, I was driven by so much fear of not being good enough. I was basically animating for my life, and I was realizing, wow, I'm doing the thing that I was dreaming about doing, but it's not really fun.
Oh.
And during that time, actually, so I finished all of that, and it was fine. But I came out of it with a pretty bad case of hyperthyroidism,
Oh.
actually. And I was in a pretty bad state overall mentally. I was angry at everyone in my life, and I remember there was this moment where I could just feel that, I'm filled with so much bad energy right now. If I keep heading down this path, if I don't do something about this is going to kill me.
Mm.
And that's when I knew, okay, I need to get out of this. Gonna have to get every help that I can get. And luckily, my mother has always been into alternative medicine and all of these kinds of things. So, because the doctors, they would have been like, okay, yeah, take some medication. And if that doesn't work, then we'll cut out like basically half your thyroid. And
Yeah.
luckily, like I knew, no, like this is something internal. Like this has something to do with my mind. And so I dove into all kinds of spirituality and therapy, and like, yeah, just went on this healing journey for about a year. And at the end of which, I finally had this realization of that, okay, I am good enough as I am, and I don't have to try to pretend to be anything else. I don't have to work my ass off to become worthy,
Mhm.
and I don't have to fight this world. I can dance through this world. And when I realized that, then suddenly I also realized that I have all this potential. I have all this love here that I want to give to this world. And when I had that realization, then it was so clear that why the hell am I making video games? When I
Yeah.
could be doing so much more. And that was when I decided that, okay, I want to go into some sort of transformative or healing profession. And it was actually when I made that decision that the hyperthyroidism went away
Mm.
and did not come back. So, and
So
then,
let me
yeah.
interrupt you there for just a second, only because I feel like this is so relatable in so many ways and so many things that you just said about the maybe not being enough. You're trying things that maybe aren't molded into the person, and you decided to, because you had such anger and angst about you, and there's just this uneasy sense about you. And you almost made yourself sick, right? It was probably unintentional, but that's just the way that it was. And that's how you have then now turned this into, because you went through this transition and this pivot, and you saw how you healed yourself, and you became, or were aware then of who you were, and what
Yes.
you bring to this world is so powerful. And so I want you kind of talk about that a little bit, where you've turned the anger and the angst into now saying, I have so much love for this world. And
Mhm.
so I just love that you just said that, because I think it came out so naturally for you, that you went from a pretty weird kind of pull and resistant state to now you said you can dance through life, I think is what you kind of
Yeah.
referenced. And let's talk about that a little, because I think a lot of people have that resistance to change because they're like, oh my goodness. And you basically made a change, and now you're living proof of flow state, happiness, and then sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very much true. And
Yeah.
just witnessing that transformation just in myself, and just realizing that, like, I for the longest time, basically, I was just I had so much self-loathing,
Mm.
and basically, thinking that, okay, I'm basically a worthless piece of whatever. You know, and then just realizing that all of this is not true, which is basically almost like a spiritual kind of insight. And just the energy, like the flow state that you describe, when suddenly you just realize that essentially your own truth, in who you are and also your worth as who you are. And then when that happens, it's just like you become like a conductor, basically. You become like a channel. And it's like just like you witness somehow like the universe or whatever acting through you. And something is coming into this world through you. And that's also just a feeling of just, coming back to this like inner sense of the inner compass, just knowing that, okay, when I do this, I can just feel that this is aligned with who I am and this is what I'm here for. And it's a sense of, okay, like this is just really what I love to do. This is an authentic expression of who I am, an authentic loving expression of who I am in this world.
I love that. And I think that people are thinking right now an authentic expression to who you are in this world and thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be that. Because we're in an era right now, I think, of a lot of people are starting to kind of open up their eyes and think like, man, is this the truth I've been saying? Is this kind of lies I've been creating in my head? And I think that once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. When you're ready for the change, you're ready for the transition, and you're ready for a growth period in your life and really kind of maybe stopping playing that victim mentality or stopping the inner critic basically beating yourself up for no apparent reason. And
Yeah.
so when you say that, I think the authentic and alignment, I'm sure there's a part of you that when you first started this journey of growth, you had some resistance. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was it just like this overnight a light switch or a bulb kind of switched off and it was that simple, or did you have a little bit of resistance there?
Um, I think at that time, not so much, because it was kind of nice because
Yeah.
now I had this different plan and it took all the pressure out of the animation thing.
Mm.
And so basically what I did is I started doing trainings and stuff like that while still working in animation. And I was super relaxed about the animation job. And yet
Wow.
I was super successful at it. That was really bizarre almost to me. That was like I was really just winging it. And somehow everything came to basically when I stopped trying too hard, that really
Mm.
unfolded. And it was actually the resistance came more recently when I finally just like decided to quit like animation like for good and really take that leap to be like, okay, let's really see if we can make this boat float. That is when actually a lot of fear came up. So much so that I actually, maybe even for the first time in my life, lost that sense of direction because there was so much anxiety that I wasn't even sure what I wanted to be doing anymore. So there was actually, yeah, there was this time, when I was like in this vertigo of, okay, I don't have my old job anymore. And the new stuff is not coming along, nearly as fast as I would hope it would. Oh my God, did I make a huge mistake? Have I been delusional all this time? Have all the people, all the naysayers, all the cynical people, have they been right actually? And I've just made this huge mistake and fell for this great lie. And yeah, and that was a really, really challenging, almost like dark night of the soul sort of time for me. And like I got really depressed towards the end. And then once again, like I hit this sort of down point, and then thanks to having some really great support, I came out of that, and all of a sudden everything became clear again. Yeah. And that was
I,
also when I realized that, okay, I really want to help people with like fear and anxiety in particular, because
yeah.
that's what I have struggled with so much. And I've really seen it so clearly that, like having been in this state of anxiety with no direction, no purpose, being so like, oh, what should I do? And then as I started working through that and seeing the anxiety lift, just seeing how sense of direction, purpose, all these things, suddenly they come back all by themselves.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, like it's the anxiety itself, that's just clouding my sense of direction and who I am. And as soon as I work through that, actually everything sorts itself out. And that was
Mm.
very, very, really, really powerful to experience.
Yeah, and I'm shaking my head, nodding, feeling all the feelings because I too right now am going through a power shift, and I think that that's such an important thing of like why we're having these conversations is that we are all human and we're doing the best that we can with the knowledge we have at our fingertips. And I think that's where the beauty really truly lies is that none of us have it figured out. And it is messy and it's hard and it's challenging and there is so much anxiety and fear and things like that. And so it sounds like you really faced the fear and you've calmed the anxiety and you've pushed through that. And so I think a lot of yours is coaching as well is through resilience and being able to face the fear, maybe walk through it. Is that kind of a fair statement? Can you tell the listeners how you fought through that and you've silenced the noise in your head too
Yeah.
of creating this, well, people aren't going to think this, and oh, maybe the
Yeah.
naysayers, and if
Mhm.
you've really came to that. So let's talk about that because I think that's where most people
Mhm.
stop and freak
Yeah.
out and quit.
Yeah. And it's no wonder because it feels so real, you know.
Yeah.
When you're in an anxious state, everything looks so dangerous and so threatening and it feels so real. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it's not, it's not true. And that's kind of sort of what you have to keep telling yourself. And I think the key is to actually stop fighting.
Mm,
No, to get out of this mindset of, I have to get myself to safety, I have to make something happen. No, you don't. You're safe. You're
mm,
fine right now. You need to calm down and connect with your basically with your essence to get out of the fear. Because the fear, the anxiety, that's like a cloud that your consciousness is like, flying through. And it clouds everything. You have these glasses on, everything, and the world just looks terrifying when you're in
right.
this state. But it's because of your state. It's because you're not being yourself. And your true self, your deepest, highest self is not afraid of anything. And also, it doesn't need anything. It doesn't want anything. It doesn't really have an agenda. It just is. And
Mm,
that's what you need to reconnect with. So I always say that the first thing, if you find yourself being anxious, just do some breathing exercise, focus on your breath, try not, stop thinking and also stop trying to fight the fear,
mm-hmm.
because that impulse of, oh, I need to get rid of the fear, that's also fear. So it's almost like you're having fear of fear. So
Yeah.
what you need to stop doing is essentially actually surrender. And then realizing that, oh, when I stop fighting, when I get out of this energy of I need to make something happen, I need to make the anxiety go away, then suddenly everything slowly starts to become clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, and all of a sudden you can approach this feeling, with compassion and love and things start to clear up again. So it's actually, I think, the way to fight it is to not fight it, is actually more to surrender, knowing that it cannot harm you.
Mm, that is so good. And I'm sitting here thinking, I went through this just very recently. So with you saying the surrender, and it's crazy, I surrendered to a few things. I'm talking like recently. And with just the surrender of not the fear, not the anxiety, not the unknown, not the try to figure out what's coming, just
Mm.
let it come and let it flow. And it's insane how quickly universe, God, divine, whatever you want to believe is that little thing that helps kind of unclear, or I guess I should say clear the path or take the fear down a little bit. It
Mm.
really happens pretty quickly. And so when
Yeah.
you talk about that and you surrender to that, it sounds like you surrendered. And let's talk about, like, you mentioned the breath work and you've mentioned some of that. Is there something else that when we think of somebody, maybe even just our younger self that went through this exact kind of pivot and shift, um, because we know that we got that feeling of, I don't know where to start. I'm feeling still stuck. What do you coach on with that? Besides just the breathing and maybe the surrendering, what else do you feel like had really made a difference for you, or that you feel like is making a difference, with your coaching that you do?
Mhm. Yeah, so I like to work a lot with internal family systems, which is a
Mm,
form of parts work. So basically, where you assume that, okay, anything, any feeling, any impulse, anything that happens basically within your psyche is basically linked to a certain part of your personality. And you have many, many of those. But you also have a self, which is not a part, which is more like this loving presence. And the goal of internal family systems is always to connect more with the energy of the self and build a relationship to your parts from that place, and building trust with them and just helping them to heal, essentially.
mm,
So and a lot of this comes down to basically more of a sort of a sophisticated form of self-love, basically
mm,
knowing that, okay, if I'm feeling anxious, then okay, there's a part of me here that feels anxious, there's a part of me here that's filled with fear, and the opposite of love, of fear, is always love. So what I need to do is I need to send this part of myself some love, and that's going to help. And I need to stop fixing it. I need to stop trying to convince it that it doesn't have to be afraid. Rather, I should just really sit there, take a moment, close my eyes, maybe do a little breathing to calm my nervous system down, and then just sort of picture this part of myself, this, fearful inner child, or however it shows up for you, and just be like, hey, I see that you're afraid, and I'm here, and you're not alone in this. And just that alone, I feel like, because when you're in a fearful mindset, you have to get back to a loving mindset. I
mm-hmm.
think that really is the key. And I think, working with parts in this way is just a very, very beautiful and powerful way of just extending love to a part of yourself that lacks it and that
Yeah.
really needs it.
So when you say that, you sending love, and somebody might be thinking like, well, how do I do that? Or what? And for me, I think and maybe we can have a little, if you think it's different than what I'm thinking, but even for me, like sending yourself some love is just really truly changing the narrative in a way. Like you just said, it's
Mhm.
like fear is the opposite of love, or love is the opposite, whatever we want to say. But you sit here and you're in this fearful state, and you really plant this picture or paint this picture of what it is and this, and you're constantly trying to like put the fear right, and so then you're gonna see the fear, and you're gonna
Yeah.
not, you almost create it, I think. And then when you say love, it's like, can you just talk about that, where you're saying you're sending love, and it can be as simple as somebody just truly sitting and saying, you know what, I understand you're fearful, I understand that there is the uncertainty, the maybe like you literally decided, okay, I'm going to be done with this, and I'm going to trust this. So this
Mhm.
was like fear and love all at the same time, but you also combat it with, I am worthy, I am deserving of this. And that
Mhm.
that that self-love, I think, is what a lot of people struggle with, is they let the internal dialogue or the fear overstimulate the part that we're trying to sit over here and say, it's okay, it's uncertain. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything is uncertain in life.
Yes.
Nothing is ever like, I don't know that anything in my life has gone exactly to plan. And that's the magic. And so when you say that, when just combating with love and changing that, what do you talk affirmations? Do you talk, because I think a lot of people, I have a lot of different people that say, affirmations, I don't really get that. Or do
Mhm.
you just talk more about loving yourself from the inside and changing that narrative of talk? Because I think that's where we can
Mhm.
kind of dive into this a little bit.
Yeah, I think all of these things that you've mentioned are part of it. The thing is basically, where do we start and where do we need to pick up at? And well, the most basic form of love is attention, right?
Mm,
So I think, especially when you're in a very acute sort of state of, oh God, there's so much anxiety here, and then you're coming with sort of like, oh, I am worthy, I am worthy. and you're trying to hammer that message in. But the question is always, with affirmations, is always like, who's listening, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a part of you, you know, very active, that's just utterly convinced that you're in danger or that you're unworthy, and you're just hammering this message home, it's just like, man, no, you don't get it. I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, sometimes before you can tell yourself the truth, you first need to listen to what it is, all you know, that to the reality that you know you're experiencing somewhere on your on the inside, and to just really and just really witness that. And that's why I like to say, you know, first thing, just don't do anything. Just breathe and be with the feeling, and just get out of the energy of something needs to happen here, you know,
Mm.
because the anxiety says we need to get to safety, and then some other part of you says we need to get rid of the anxiety because that's terrible. And it's both is kind of like trying to get somewhere, and just getting out of that, and changing the energy to a, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Our outer situation is fine. The fact that we're feeling anxious is fine. Okay, now tell me why are you so afraid? Why do you believe that you're unworthy? How long have you been believing that you're unworthy? That
Mm.
must have been so hard, you know? So then you move from just attention to actually extending compassion.
Mm.
And then when that part of yourself really feels listened to and heard and seen in basically all the suffering that it has endured, you know, then usually something magical happens when they are suddenly open up, and then they become receptive to all of these positive ideas. Actually, I think, and by the way, I am your grown-up self. I'm your 30-year-old self. I've been on this planet for a while. I know things. I'm telling you, you are worthy. All of those messages that you got as a kid were bullshit. You are so worthy. You are so capable. And all of a sudden, like, that message can really sink in. you know
Mm.
and then, yeah, yeah, and from there you can move on to, yeah, basically crafting an entire new story for
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, because it is true that our reality is the stories we tell ourselves about the world,
Oh,
but we can
yeah.
change that. We can make decisions about which stories we tell ourselves. And yeah, and then that is really within our power, and
Yeah.
that's what is so amazing.
And I think that's what's so amazing to really start to think about. And a lot of times I think that people kind of go, whoa, 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 like I don't want to heal that part, or I don't want to address it. I actually am working with a client that, it's like I'm afraid of what's going to come out or what might be said. And it's like, but you have been saying that to yourself
Mm.
over and over and over again. So just to write it out might actually help kind of release it. I think a lot of
Mm.
times in writing, you just kind of can release. And, I was basically saying, like, you don't have to write to have the answer. You don't have to write to fix it. You don't have to express it. But like you said, you have to give the attention to it so that you can actually heal and move past it and rewrite the narrative and be in charge of it and be in your own authentic power to be able to say, you know what, like you said, I'm a little older, I'm a little wiser, I have some experience, and I want to remind you and remind that person inside of you to say, you are worthy, you are deserving, you're pretty badass because you've made it through all these stages of your life, and
Exactly.
you're still getting up, and you're still wanting something more out of your life. And I think that's what's so important is that the redirects and the rewiring and the reframing and all the things that you can truly choose to do really make a huge difference, as long as, like you said, you give it the attention. Most of
Mhm.
us are too busy, we're too this, we're too, we're wrapped up, and it's, oh, I'm too old, and it's like,
Yeah.
you are so worthy of, we were born worthy and deserving, and through life we've just kind of like, eh, I'm guilty of it. I used to say the things like, this is what it is, it's as good as it gets, I don't know. But then don't you get sick of your own bullshit? And I think
Mhm.
that's what it really takes, is to sit with your own bullshit and say, why do I continue to say this narrative? Why do
Yeah.
I continue to live this story when I don't feel good? I'm fearful and anxious in this story too,
Hmm.
right? And then you think of that new story and you're like, I'm fearful and I'm anxious. Well, why not try a new story? I like to talk about that. Like, try on a new piece of clothing, try on a new experience, try on a new attitude, try
Yeah.
something else on. And so I think that that's so powerful that you said that. It's like if you don't have the attention to it, you're never going to be able to do that. And I like to say awareness. If you don't have that awareness, you're never going to shift.
Hmm.
And so I I want to just kind of think about I'd like to talk to the audience in these, situations where we've been through it, right? We've kind of been through it. We've had our setback, we've had our thing, we've had our pivot, we've had that, and we just both expressed that it isn't ever perfect. And for the person that's listening, that's like, man, Robin, what you said, and I want to bring attention and things for you, you said breath is kind of a first step, but what if somebody is just still like so unsure and so unclear and they don't really truly know how to even get started with just a simple little breath? Is there something that you could say that could even just be a little bit different of a push for somebody? Because I think we overcomplicate the process. And so for me, it was like, just get started. You don't have to, like you
Hmm.
said, you don't have to know how to breathe correctly. We all do. You don't have to know how to journal correctly. You don't have to meditate with the
Hmm.
clearest of the mind. And so I think that's what people get afraid of too, is I don't know how to do it. And so what would you
Yeah.
say to that?
I think that's very true. I think in many cases, just a good push can actually do a lot of wonders. And I
Mm,
think, and this is where, if you're very just, where you can really get stuck in the therapeutic work, because you're just
mm,
like surrounding, trying to solve problems, and doing good work, be learning how to be compassionate with yourself. But at the end of the day, I think if you want to become more confident, more courageous, you have to take courageous action. You
mm.
have to do things that you thought you couldn't do. You have to do the things that you thought like, okay, this is way too scary or dangerous. No, and you just have to experience yourself doing that and being okay. And that is going to, and that experience is going to, that's what's really going to help you grow. That's what's going to sort of get this message really deep into your tissues. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I love also the coaching, or I like this idea of, having sort of a more therapeutic approach to coaching where you can have like all of the inner work but within a framework that's action oriented, where it's also like, okay, if we had hit a hard block, let's work through that on the inside. And as soon as we're ready, okay, now see if you can push a little, see if you can take a courageous step. You know.
Yeah.
And so it's always, I think that's feels like a formula that really ensures that we're actually growing and really creating measurable changes in our lives.
I love that because I think a lot of times I got stuck in the I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm growing, but am I taking a step?
Yeah.
And it took for me it was it I just actually talked about this. It was one decision. I made the one decision that ultimately then started a whole plethora of other things to fall into place. And so I love that you say that. And I think the hardest step, I'm going to say this out loud and turn it up a little bit if you're listening, is the hardest step is the most courageous step. And it's the step that is most worth it. Like there's just
Yes.
I don't know, it's almost like there's no bad workout, right? It's like there's no bad first step when you're taking
Mhm.
courageous action.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
And you're
I
proof of
think
that.
I think Brene Brown once said something like, I don't value success. I value courage. No.
Mm,
So even if whatever you do doesn't like have the greatest turnover, if it was a courageous step, it's still worth it because
yes.
it's almost like it releases a kind of creative energy, and it's like you're inspiring yourself, and you've grown. Every time you jump over your own shadow, you're becoming stronger. You're becoming more capable of really doing something out there, creating something out there. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
it's always worth it.
Yeah. And if you don't try, you'll never know. And I think that's the biggest part of it is a lot of times I know I've stood in my own way and I still tend to sometimes stand in my own way because of the fear. And I've learned to love the fear and say, instead of, one of my biggest mentors to me is Ed Milet, and he talks about that.
Mm.
Rename or reevaluate what fear means to you. Maybe it's
Yes.
exciting. And sometimes even with
Yes.
these new opportunities that I'm doing with interviewing all of you amazing people, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous and I'm so scared. And it's like, but if I wasn't nervous and I wasn't scared, I wouldn't be excited and it wouldn't be worth it.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it's just so cool because renaming the fear to love, it's, you said it as simple as that, really. You can just rename fear to love, like love the fear, love the excitement, love the,
Mm.
the possibilities that come from getting out and trying something, because I know everybody is dying right now to try something. I told you that at the very beginning, like once you open your eyes and you see it, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
And there's so many people right now that I think are like, is this really the way our life is supposed to be? This grind, this go to work, this don't, and this and that. And there's people like us who are like, no, you can live in your purpose and your passion and your joyful state of mind. And it's scary. We're not going to say it isn't, but it's so worth it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good point, right? Like viewing fear not necessarily as something negative, you
Yeah.
know. And I think there is a natural fear that's actually very healthy. I think you have like sort of trauma-related fears that need working through,
Sure.
but when you're doing something you've never done before, when you're stepping into the unknown, essentially, there's always going to be fear. You will never, I don't think any amount of therapy or whatever is going to get you, to around that moment of like jumping over your shadow. It's always going to be there.
Hmm.
And that's because it has a purpose. And I think, and to me, it actually feels like, and I have this image of like, okay, fear, if it's healthy fear, it has two faces. It's like when you're walking towards it, it's like this giant monster and it feels like, oh, it's going to kill you. But once you walk past it, all the strength of this giant monster is suddenly in your back.
Hmm.
And now it's helping you go forward.
Yeah.
So I think what fear does, especially, it's this buildup of energy and excitement that feels like fear and anxiety at first. But once you've taken the courageous step, it turns into just energy that you can use to create whatever you want to do. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that was a powerful realization for me, when that
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, I don't think I've ever heard it explained that way, but it's just it's like this, it's almost like the slingshot, you pull it back and then you go forward. It's like we're so afraid, we're so afraid, we're so afraid. And once you pull and you go through it, you're like, oh my gosh.
I'm soaring right now.
You
Crazy
get
cool.
that self-esteem, that courage, that confidence, that it just starts to happen. So I love that. Well, so Robin, I just want to kind of circle this all back in, and I appreciate your time. I just really wanted to kind of talk about that you really truly took the courageous step. You trusted your intuition, your heart, your compass, like you've mentioned, and you really have gone from even a career that maybe didn't look perfect to our parents. We've chatted about that. Like I was always the one kind of like, well, what's this and what's this? And I don't want to do that. And so
Mm.
you've made the steps and you've done all this and you're now teaching other people, and mentoring them through this process. And so I really want to, make sure that people know where to find you as well. And then how we kind of like to end the episodes here on the Power Shift is giving us like one mic drop moment where you can just basically speak from your heart. Is it a mantra, a quote? Is it something that you can just speak from your heart and say? And we'll just kind of wrap up that, we have to lead with courage and push through the fear. And so I really want everybody to know where they can follow you or find you and learn more about what it is that you do. And then, share that mic drop moment with us.
Okay. Oh, now I have to think of a good mic drop moment.
That's why I
Well,
do this on the spot because it's something that's just, ooh, yeah,
yeah, we'll see what comes up. Well, so
yeah.
you can find me at my website at www.robintamura.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at robin.tamura. That's Tamura. And that's pretty much it in terms of finding me. And so for the mic drop thing, just know in your heart that that your wholeness can never be threatened.
Oof.
And take that to be an unchallengeable truth and move from there. Move from there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not even gonna, I want that to be left for the interpretation of everybody, because we're all gonna have a different turn on for that. So wow, I absolutely love that. And Robin, I just want to thank you so much for such an amazing conversation. So many little aha nuggets for people to take away and start just moving the needle forward. So that mic drop moment actually gave me some chills. I might even have to go rewatch and listen to that right now. So thank you so much for your vulnerability, your sharing, and the inspiration that you do for everybody else to make that power shift. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Maggie.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in to The Power Shift. I hope today's episode inspired you to see setbacks as stepping stones and embrace the beauty in the chaos. Real growth happens when we align with our true selves and live unapologetically. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more incredible people like you discover the show. Until next time, keep making those power shifts and step boldly into the life that's authentically yours.